committee. I did indicate that there was a name from South Korea that I couldn't remember, so I'd like to repeat the list once more. The message committee of this 70th anniversary includes the Reverend Dr. Hunjube, the Reverend Dr. Susan Darber, His Eminence Metropolitan Dr. Vasilius, and Ms. Miriam Jane Weby. His Eminence will moderate, and Miriam will be the rapporteur. We expect them to bring the message first on Wednesday morning, so that you look at the draft before they can amend it and bring us a final text. The plenary we've just had a number of people in the queue, and it was important because the ecumenical diaconia document is still in the process of finalization. And member churches were sent a draft, and the intention was that we receive comments from member churches, as well as harvesting your own input as Central Committee members to this document. And therefore, the Honorable Member, Dr. Cavas, was right. It is still work in progress. It's not for action in terms of receiving it. I would like to say that if we want to get your views, those of you who are on the queue, may I, from the leadership, plead with us, please, when you take a mic, try to be as brief as possible, number one. Number two, we are 150 members, and we have observers. These are open sessions. Can we bear with one another so that we do not dominate the microphones? So if we let you not speak, it's not because we are being impolite. We would like to have others bring their input as well. Thank you very much. Bishop Marian will be moderating the next session.
As we begin this session and have our time together in this session, we really are grateful that we gather in the presence of a loving God from whom all light and goodness flows. And as we do begin, we will have many reports and many documents that we'll go through in this session. And there'll be times to receive those and hear what's happening in the reports, and then refer them to the committees and all the documents then that will be considered in the different committees in the next few days. So we'll begin first with the report from the Permanent Committee on Consensus and Collaboration, and that is your document GIN 06. And I will turn to Bishop Simo Pereira to begin introducing us to that. Oh, okay, begin with His Eminence Gennadios, Metropolitan Gennadios, and Bishop Simo, who are the co-moderators for this.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The document GEN 06 is the reports includes the two reports of the two meetings of the PCC since the last Central Committee in 2016. We met twice as a committee, in October 2017 in Rhodos Islands in Greece, and very recently last May in Freiburg in Brisgau in Germany. I would like kindly to the members of the PCC committee to stand in order, please. The PCC, we are only 4? Where are the others?
He's here. They're all here.
We are 14. Thank you. Then this committee is chaired by Bishop Simopera and myself. I will be very brief on the schedule how to present this report. I would like only to, to recall or to remind ourselves that this permanent committee, according to the Rule 9.6, has the responsibility for continuing the authority mandate, concerns and dynamic of the Special Commission mandated by the 8th Assembly in Harare in 1998. It is also giving advice and making recommendations to governing bodies during and between assemblies in order to contribute to the formation of consensus matters consensus on matters proposed for the agenda. Also facilitating improved participation of the Orthodox in the entire life and work of the Council. Offering also counsel and providing opportunity for action in matters of common interest. And finally, giving attention to matters of ecclesiology. I would like to ask now my colleague, Bishop Simo, to present the two reports, and also Mrs. Ann Makul, who is here, to refer to something which is very special, coming from the first, but also for the second meeting, the fair and adequate question. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence.
The report, excuse me, I apologize. The report goes, is not for action, it's a hearing now, because the report is a hearing session. The report goes to Policy Reference Committee and also to the Governance and Nominations Committee for study and to report back to the plenary. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. I will present you the first part of the first report and Mrs. Ankul the second one. And we try to be briefly, so there are actually two issues which I want to put on the table in the first report. And the first one refers to pages 4 and 5, membership matter. Pages 4 and 5, membership matter. We know that there is one church whose membership is suspended. And what happens with this church in the future is one question. The other question is, we are for the first time in a situation where we have to reflect what does it mean in practice that a church has a suspended membership. And this issue is reflected on pages 4 and 5. And we encourage, that's paragraph 32 on page 5, we encourage the General Secretary to continue study and reflection on the process for addressing suspensions of churches from membership in the WCC and how to relate with a suspended church. For these reflections, we have provided also an appendix, which is on page 12. There is a draft proposal, status of a suspended member church in WCC, and the issue is sent for referral to Policy Reference Committee. The next issue is fair and adequate representation, but I leave it now to Mrs. McCool. So the second issue which I want you to notice is on pages 10 and 11. Prayer and common prayer in the ecumenical movement. When the Special Commission had its work, they were not only discussing about the consensus method, but they also provided material for prayer and common prayer in the ecumenical movement. These documents are not, this document with its appendix is not so well known, and therefore we have put it also here in table. We recommend in paragraph 62 first that the Assembly Planning Committee and the Assembly Worship Committee use as resources the relevant sections of the report of the Special Commission on Common Prayer and undertake its planning with attention to the guidance provided in the report and the framework in Appendix A. The Appendix A refers now to this report of the Special Commission. And this issue is sent for referral to Policy Reference Committee. 62P, we recommend all staff on the WCC, especially newly hired staff and those with responsibility for the preparation of prayer for WC's meetings and gatherings, be provided with the relevant sections of the report of the Special Commission on Common Prayer, including Appendix A. And this issue is sent to Governance and Nominations Committee. Here are my introduction, Mrs. Moderator.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll hear the other, and then we'll have it all before us.
Thank you, moderator. The text on fair and adequate is dense because the question is important. The permanent committee took much time over the course of 2 meetings to unpack the issue, the history of the issue, and the provisions of the rules and the intention of the rules as we explore the issue. You'll find the first analysis at pages 5 through 10 of the combined report, and then in the second document that's attached to the report, you'll find our analysis of the issue at pages 18 to 21. We included such length so that the analysis would be accessible to all, because we recognized the difficulty of the issue. So it was referred to us over the course of many meetings, and we looked at the rules. In the first analysis, let me just go to my, the specific proposal that was sent from the Gender Advisory Group, we found would set a fixed ratio rather than a target for the category of gender. And the application of that proposal would have the effect of penalizing churches that do not comply by reducing their number of assembly delegates previously assigned for that church. We recognized that that was exactly the intention of the proposal, but found that it actually upset the basic premise of what the WCC is, which is a fellowship of churches, wherein the primary responsibility and authority to delegate representation of a church rests with the church. We can encourage churches to adhere to the wishes of the fellowship as articulated by the Central Committee, but cannot force it. So in our first section, you will find at paragraphs 54 and 55, our conclusion from the first section that we urge churches to, in good faith, search among their various levels of participation and leadership in order to compose their delegations for assemblies in ways that meet the targets. We found that the term fair and adequate was appropriate under the circumstances of this diverse fellowship rather than specific quotas. In turning to page 19, one of the reasons why you'll find the logic of that is the churches have been telling us that. The percentages at paragraph 47 for Porto Alegre and then Busan indicate how close we come to meeting the percentages that are set as targets. Now, that isn't to say, okay, then everything stays the way it is. We recognize that there's a serious concern about this issue, and we had been tasked to offer some concrete suggestions in response to this. The first thing we thought about was, well, should we change the targets if they're unreasonable? Should we recommend to the Central Committee, gee, maybe you ought to adjust those targets? And we decided, the Central Committee in its wisdom sets the targets, and they've been set for some time. But we did recognize that there are 4 different stages at which governing bodies are assembled. The first is for the assembly, and there the responsibility and authority rests with the church. Then again, in the formation of the Central Committee that the assembly undertakes. Then again, at the formation of an executive committee by the Central Committee, and then the formation of commissions and committees. So you'll see in the documents a little bit of unpacking of that. Wherein, at the first instance, the assembly level, it rests with the church. It seemed to us that at the formation of the Central Committee, the prerogatives of the Central Committee for the formation of governing bodies that reflect target balances shifts to the Central Committee itself. Already the church has sent delegations charged with responsibility and authority of the church to represent it. All of those delegations should be available for the formation of the Central Committee. We also noted that at the Central Committee, 150 members, not all churches are represented. Some churches have never been represented. Some churches traditionally have more than one delegate, representative member of Central Committee. So these all fall into, let's say, a soup of what is fair and adequate and need to be considered. So not to take up, way more time, but I'm happy to be available to respond to questions. But there were two concrete suggestions that we do offer. In the formation of the assembly, the way the rules currently are, I'll give you the reference if you need it, but the churches are given 85% of the number that will form an assembly to propose their delegations. Those names come back to the WCC, and where there are, severe imbalances, the Central Committee will propose the other 15% of names back to the churches. It remains with the church to agree to those additional names, but that will achieve better balances. We propose that that ratio shift from 80 to 20. It will give a little bit more room for achieving balances. Again, it rests with the church to agree to this, but it's a way to better balance. The other concrete proposal that we're suggesting is to bring the target age of youth in line with faith and order, and to lift that to 35. Some churches choose not to do ecumenical formation on the ground and want to send, they balance, these churches choose to balance influence as well as ecumenical formation as well as the target balances. This would allow a reaching into a cohort of theologians in line with faith and order. So it doesn't require a church to move up to that age, but it allows that to fill the category. So this we offer up to you for your consideration and reflection and the work in the Policy Reference Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So the full report now of the Permanent Committee on Consensus and Collaboration from their 2 meetings is before us for referral to the Policy Reference Committee and the Governance and Nominations Committee. Are there any questions or comments that you wish to make? If not, will you show the cards, see if you are ready to refer this for the next consideration at the committee meetings? All right, thanks for showing the cards, but I do see a comment at microphone 3. Okay.
Thank you. Just I would like, of course, I agree to refer those to the both committees, but I have a reservation about 2 issues. The first issue, that the age of youth was decided internationally, and it's not fair that we will put our own parameters as WCC upon to the age of the youth so as to bring balances in our organization. This is my first comment. My second one is that if we are considering that we have 750 members, delegates of the assembly, The 15% is about 106 persons. And I think that they are more than enough to be appointed by the nomination committee according to the suggestion of the churches, again, rightly and mentioned. And I disagree to exceed them to 20%, in which it will be 1/5 of the assembly nominated or preferable nominated by the nomination committee with the approval of the churches. So I will not go with those two recommendations. Thankful at the same time for the hard work which the committee have done regarding the issue of the constitution and the changes in which, and I don't know why she didn't mention them. I read the document at home before coming here a long time ago when it was published. And I think that there are many important issues also about evaluating the work of the WCC in the past 4 years with the new constitution and rules. And I think it is time also now to refer this issue to the nomination committee to think about amendments of rules because of the experience which we had negatively or positively on the issue of the rules and constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, and that'll be helpful as these get referred to the committees for them to consider. Microphone 4.
I'm Eva Brunner, Church of Sweden, speaking in English. I don't think you are very young when you are 29, and you are definitely not young when you are 34. And I think the consequence of if it passes with 35, the consequence will be that we get more people, more women and men that are 33, 34, 35. And we won't get very many under 30. If you are elected, nominated and elected when you are 34, you are 42 by the end of the term, and then you are not even a young adult any longer. The reference to faith and order is good, but I think faith and order have 35 years because you have to have a doctorate when you are in that group, and that's not very common when you are under 30. But in our context, we really have to manage to find and propose women and men under 30. That's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful feedback as well. Microphone 1.
Hello. Emily Evans, Uniting Church in Australia, English, as well as a member of the ECOS Commission. Can I get everyone in the house who is 30 or under to please stand up, including the stewards? Or was under 30 when they were elected to Central Committee? Look around the room. We are here. As part of the ECOS, you can sit down now. As part of the ECOS Commission, one of our tasks is to be an advisory function to the work and life of the church. Yesterday, the ECOS Commission facilitated a youth lunch, which was held upstairs with all stewards, youth advisors, and young members of the Central Committee. One of the main topics that we discussed was this question on reducing or increasing the age to 35. As you can see, we exist, we are young, and we're around the room. And I think this is an important topic for that particular committee, but also other committees to consider. And when you go back home, to look around in your churches and see the people who are young, and to start that ecumenical formation at the grassroots level. So when these young people come to meetings like the Central Committee or Assembly, that we are equipped to be able to understand what is happening, to be able to contribute effectively.
Thanks. These have been most helpful, so the committees will have a lot to consider. Let's turn now to membership matters. That's the next item, and I think you're going to want document GIN 05, And I'll turn to our General Secretary to introduce this piece to us.
Moderator, the first part of this document was already dealt with yesterday as we welcomed 2 new member churches, the African Brotherhood Church and the Community of Baptist Churches in Central Africa as full members of the World Council of Churches. But there was one remaining issue. It is actually for information, but it was raised also as a question. What is the status of the follow-up of the decision from Trondheim about the suspension of the Church of Jesus Christ on Earth by his special envoy Simon Kumbangu? We have informed the Church according to the decision. We have had some efforts to find a common time and a common place for the meeting between the leadership of the Church and the WCC leadership, and we have not succeeded yet. But it's on the agenda, and we will continue to work on this. That's what to be said at this point.
Thank you. All right, if you're just simply ready then to refer the membership matters to the Policy Reference Committee, will you indicate that with showing your cards? Thank you. Thanks so much. I think we'll deal with assembly matters this afternoon. Do you want to comment on that now? Okay. But this afternoon we'll deal with the assembly matters. But so let's turn now to communications, and I'll ask Miriam if Miriam will come and begin the presentation on communications. And you'll see that you have several documents for communications, GenCom 01, 02, and 03. So you can begin to consider those documents.
Good afternoon. My name is Miriam Waby from the Church of Scotland, and I will speak in English. During this Central Committee, the Communications Committee will be looking at the Communications Strategy, GenCom 02, as usual in collaboration with the Programme Committee, and presenting any revisions. Building on our work over the previous 2 Central Committees, we will be discussing communications as embedded in the living fellowship of the World Council of Churches. As you can see from the Communications Update, GenCom 03, this fellowship is lived out as we walk, work, and pray together with our member churches and with our ecumenical partners. This is the vision which guides the communications activities and the prophetic voice of the WCC. Communication is at the heart of the World Council of Churches. It should reflect the soul and activities of our living fellowship. It's vital that communication is integrated into and reflects the overall activities of the Council. This is why the Communications Committee works closely with the Programme Committee. Our comms strategy cannot be understood on its own, but always in light of the programmatic work of the whole fellowship. At the WCC, we have a huge platform covering 120 countries and more than 500 million Christians. We can use this platform to bring about hope and change in the world. Thus, we continue to encourage the advocacy role of the fellowship. This prophetic voice, accompanied always with prayer, brings together all parts of the fellowship to call for change. An example of this is the Global Day of Prayer to End Famine in May 2017 and June 2018. As part of this, we enable key communicators across the WCC, encouraging training and seminars. We are all communicators, every one of us, both here and in our communities. And part of the work of the WCC is capacity building, in order to help us all utilize best our skills in innovative and inspiring ways. This innovative and inspiring communication reflects our living fellowship, which is characterized by faith, hope, and love. We should be moving in a direction which is less institutional and more focused on people and on the member churches. To enable this more flexible communication, we continue to look at constructive solutions for addressing audiences, with a special focus on the opportunities of digital media. I'm sure as a fellowship here, we can all say that we very much look forward to the new WCC website when it is launched later this year. Establishing and strengthening relationships between members of the fellowship and conducting dialogue with member churches and ecumenical partners. I would like to finish by thanking the communications team both here at the WCC and throughout the fellowship, who continue to put in extraordinary effort into enabling our communications. Please know that our prayers are with you, especially this year with the 70th anniversary and the ecumenical pilgrimage of Pope Francis later this week.
Oh, thank you, Miriam. Yeah. Are there any comments or questions about communications that you would like to make before we refer this to the committee? Then if you will refer this to the Communications Committee, will you show your card? Thank you. We'll turn now to the moderator of our Financial Policy Committee and ask Archbishop Vika Nakazian to come and present the finance documents. And you'll want to look at it'll be Finance Gen Fin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 3.1. So we have a whole lot of finance documents that will be a part of the discussion at the Financial Policy Committee.
Thank you, Moderator. This is the third Central Committee meeting under the revised Constitution and Rules, Busan 2013. Already we have completed the first 4-year cycles of our work, and for the first time, thanks to the structure set in place by the strategic plan and its accompanying documents, the financial strategy, we consider how we performed against objectives and indicators and set a strategy for the next 4 years. The Finance Policy Committee has a particular role under the revised rules. The matters of approval of the annual budget and financial statements, as well as financial monitoring, are delegated to Executive Committee. Central Committee retains its role and responsibility to ensure the long-term financial stability of the Council. In this context, the Finance Policy Committee offers recommendation on the financial policies concerning specifically membership contributions, general reserve and investments, income and fundraising strategy, as well as on any significant finance issues reported by Executive Committee. Accountability Report 2014-2017. Let us first take stock of the performance compared to the financial strategy 2014-2017. I refer you to the document Gen Fin 05 Accountability Report on implementation of financial strategy 2014-2017. The Council reports a strong performance in managing its finance over the 4-year period. I share the highlights. The Basse Guest House and Conference recorded turnaround in the period, moving from a deficit of 0.6 million Swiss franc in 2013 to a break-even result in 2017. There were 4 new funding partners supporting projects under the Assembly mandate related in particular to HIV and AIDS, including work with children and peace building in Syria. The general reserve were increased by almost 1 million Swiss francs and closed the period at 7.1 million Swiss francs or 0.9 million Swiss francs above the target of 6.2 million Swiss francs. Infrastructure costs were decreased by 1 million Swiss francs from 2014 to 2017, liberating income for program work. There were no financial audit issues. Financial statements were issued on time, and budgets were approved before the start of the year. which had not been the case before 2014. And there were no program deficit during the period. All program expenditure was covered either by program income or by use of available program funds. In addition, concerning membership contributions, the Council reports the following. Membership contribution increased in original currencies from 2014-2017 by an estimated value of 0.2 million Swiss francs. Although, when stated in Swiss francs, membership contribution remained stable at 3.9 million Swiss francs. And 76% of member churches paid membership contribution in at least one of the 4 years. The document Gen Fin 04, report on progress with the membership contribution plan, will be studied by the Finance Policy Committee. Managing program work within the available fund was perhaps the most significant financial challenge and achievement. In 2014, program income totaled 21 million Swiss francs and 19 million Swiss francs was considered the level required to sustain the breadth of projects to meet the strategic plan 2014-2017. Contribution income then fell sharply in 2015, following the change in the Swiss National Bank foreign exchange policy. Contributions income was stable at 18.1 million Swiss francs from 2015 to 2017. Measures were taken by the General Secretary within effect from 2016 to ensure sustainability. Financial Strategy 2018-2021. The Executive Committee has developed the draft financial strategy in consultation during 3 different sessions since November 2016. The draft is presented in the document Gen Fin 07, WCC Financial Strategy 2018-2021. The Income Development Strategy 2018-2021 forms an integral part of the document and will require our careful consideration and support. The long-term financial stability of the Council depends principally on the member churches and our involvement and commitment together with that of the church-related agencies. The financial strategy for the next period includes a stable scenario for program income at 18.5 million Swiss francs annually. In other respects, the 4-year period will present some very unusual transactions and some risks. In 2019, the Council expects to conclude contracts for sale of land and 2 building projects. A building reserve policy is presented for consideration at this meeting, together with proposed revision in the General Reserve Policy, Gen Fin 08. During this 4-year period, the Council will demolish 2 office wings and rental income will suffer. A net charge to General Reserve for the running costs of the Ecumenical Center is anticipated during 2020-2023, estimated at 2.45 million Swiss francs in a total across the 4 years before an income stream can be generated from a new Green Village office building. A revised strategy for general reserves is required to ensure stability during this period. Further, the financial strategy 2018-2021 addresses the financial scenario for the Assembly Fund, estimating that 5.8 million Swiss francs might be available to cover expenditure for the 11th Assembly, while comparing that total with the level of about 8 million Swiss francs, which is required to sustain Assembly with the participation level experienced in Porto Alegre 2006 and Busan 2013. In Norway, the Finance Policy Committee approached its work by recalling the attitude of the pilgrim who is called to travel light throughout the world, seeking God and God's reign in new ways. Let us continue in our task, discerning the sign which will lead us forward as fellow pilgrims on our path to unity, justice, and peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Now you can see they've got a full scope of work ahead of them. Are there any comments or questions that you have before we refer these? Okay, if you'll refer these to the, be considered by the Financial Policy Committee, will you show your card? Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, so we'll have a lot of work to do. So the next one is governance and nominations. So if you want to look at those documents, you're going to need Gen Nom 02 and Gen 06, Gen Nom 03, 04, and 05. And I'll turn to our General Secretary to present some of those items for us that will be considered in the Governance and Nominations Committee.
Thank you, Moderator. We have several issues presented in Gen Nom 02, some for action, some for information. And I'll try to sort out for you what is for action. The first action was already taken on the replacements for the Central Committee. However, there was one missing in the list that should be added, and I will add it for you now. It is from the Ethiopian Evangelical Church Mekane Yesus, where the former president of the church, Reverend Dr. Waxiom Idosa Negeri, will be replaced by Reverend Jonas Igezu Dibisa, the present president of the church. This will be then referred to the nomination committee and brought back here for decision. The next point, 1B, is pieces of information about how the Executive Committee was filled with participants from the Central Committee in this transition period with some departures and some changes. We go to point 1C, which is for action. It's to replace Reverend Jan Jansen with Bishop Dr. Christoph Mainz from the Evangelische Kirche in Deutschland as member of the Permanent Committee on Consensus and Collaboration. There are also some pieces of information for you in 1D about Assembly Planning Committee representatives that have been named by our ecumenical partners, and also we see the same replacement of Reverend Jan Jansen with Bishop Dr. Christoph Mainz. We also have, for information, the follow-up of the decision in Trondheim to appoint experts for the Assembly Worship Committee. We come then to Romans 2, consultative bodies, and that is for action. These are proposals from the Executive Committee based on proposals from the churches who have had representatives in these commissions and consultative groups, but then ask that they are replaced with somebody else from the same church for different reasons. I don't list them now, but these are for action, and they will be referred to the nomination committee for discussion. Then there is one issue of another matter in Romans 3. This is following up a proposal from the Permanent Committee on Consensus and Collaboration. There is a recommendation that a small working group consisting of Central Committee members assisted by staff be formed to address matters related to the WCC Constitution and Rules, as referred by the Central Committee, in order to propose amendments with its report and recommendations in time to be considered by the 2020 Central Committee, and then decided or confirmed, as the case may be, by the 11th Assembly. This is the measure to start a process addressing what we have discovered should be looked at, maybe revised, from the great revision we did of the constitutional rules before the 10th Assembly. It is not a proposal to do that exercise fully again, but to adjust what is necessary. And this is then referred to the nomination committee for discussion. The steering committee, we come to 3B, the steering committee for the real estate development. There is an information from the executive committee how supplements have been made to make sure that the steering committee was fully able to do its work with representatives from this body, and you read what has been appointed so far. There is also one piece of action. We have been granted the possibility to use 2 highly qualified advisors to the steering committee, one from the Protestant Church of Switzerland, Rolf Berweger, and one from EKD in Germany, Dr. Viva Volkmann. And we ask that they are formally appointed also by the Central Committee at this meeting. The last point, 3C, for information about the appointments of members from the Executive Committee to the Audit Committee. This is the nomination document and goes for information to everybody, but particularly for action and discussion in the nomination committee.
Why don't you go ahead and present to us also the code of conduct for the governing bodies and the child safeguarding policy, and then we'll see if there are any other comments before we do the referral.
Moderator, these are 2 important issues, actually 3 documents. The first is Gen Nom 03, and then Gen Nom 04 and Gen Nom 041. That it relates to 2 issues. The first is Gen Nom 03, a proposal of a code of conduct for governing bodies, commissions, consultative and advisory bodies. So it's actually about you and everybody you appoint to represent the WCC in some way as trustees of the council. This is not for the staff. We have already approved a similar code of conduct for staff, but when that was done by the executive committee, you had that authority, it was asked that we actually need the same for those who are in different functions representing the World Council of Churches. And this is the answer to that. A proposal that shows, I would say, obvious principles that should be taken care of or respected when you represent and participate in the work of the WCC with its values and its basis. I don't read it here. I think this is clear and can be ready for discussion also in the nomination committee. Then there is another related issue, but of a very special character, WCC child safeguarding policy. This is I would say, an overdue issue. Most organizations of our kind, and also many of our churches, have already, for reasons we well know and which we deeply regret, had to make very clear policies on why we need to pay attention to the safeguarding of children in our midst, but also in every context where the WCC is involved, where we are involved as program workers, we are involved as partners with others. We need to have a child safeguarding policy that reminds us what our obligations are, but also that is a standard if there are issues we have to address. So I strongly recommend this, and also the document that shows a communication and implementation plan for this. We find that this is relevant for the WCC, and it can be also quite useful for the member churches. It has been processed through the Executive Committee in 2 phases. The first was a first draft, but the reaction was that we also needed to add more theological reflection about why this is our policy, why this is our principles, and that has been done in this document, and this is now recommended for you from the Executive Committee for approval.
Okay, thank you. All these items are then to be referred to the Governance and Nominations Committee. Are there any questions or comments that you wish to make on these? Yes, Miriam, go ahead to microphone 2.
Thank you, Miriam Waby, Church of Scotland, and I'll speak in English. Can I ask that we refer Gen Nom 04 and 4.1 also to the Communications Committee? I think there's, both for its own merit and for as an example of how other committees and things can work with communications, I think we would like to discuss that.
So that's a request that we refer the Code of Conduct and the Child Safeguarding policy also to the Communications Committee. If you support that, would you show by the card? All right, good. That's what we'll do as well. All right, microphone 3.
Marianne Brekken from Church of Norway. I have a question and to clarification. In the Code of Conduct, I see that it's not mentioned anything about sexual harassment. And in this year of where we have seen the Me Too movement as well, I wonder if we already have another document that are covering all of these issues. If not, I would strongly suggest that the committee look into it. Thank you.
We already have policies for that, but of course you can discuss whether we should make it one document or still keep it 2 documents. But this is in addition to what we already have.
All right, if you're ready to refer these documents to Governance and Nominations, and some of them to Communications as well, show your card. Great, thank you. Now we also have a report from the Audit Committee, and Dr. Qualis is ready to offer you that report. And then the question will become, do you want to go ahead and take an action now to receive the report of the Audit Committee, or do you want to simply refer it also to the Financial Policy Committee and then take your action later when it comes back from its report?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12:34. Due to my English, and due to the fact that I have to read this report by letter, I ask that it will be proposed also on the screen, so those who will not understand my pronunciation can go by reading it. In accordance with its mandate, the Audit Committee reports to Executive Committee and distributes reports to the Central Committee. This report covers the period from the last meeting of Central Committee in June 2016 until today. Members of the Audit Committee were Mr. Alan Bittner, he is from June 2016 to March 2017, Mr. Miles Stott, Bishop Petra Bose-Haber, and Dr. Alkawas, Ms. Anne Gross-Frintrop, from April 2017 until to date. Ms. Anne Gross-Frintrop, Director Central Services with responsibility for finance with the Federation of Swiss Protestant Churches, joined the committee at its meeting in April 2017. The former moderator of the committee, Mr. Alan Bittner, resigned in March 2017 after more than 15 years of service. Summary of previous meetings. The Audit Committee met on 4 occasions during the period November 2016, April 2017, November 2017, April 2018, and issued 4 reports to Executive Committee. November 2016. The committee reviewed the audit plan 2016 as presented by the auditor and the annual assessment of fraud risk as presented by staff concerning a report monitoring of compliance with policy on WCC offices outside Switzerland. The committee heard that 4 of the 5 EIO offices remained without correct registration for social security purposes, while the case of 1 office had been resolved in 2016. In relation to the Green Village development project, the committee agreed that office renovation costs would no longer be capitalized and that the net book value of office renovations should be fully depreciated over the years 2016 to 19, and anticipation of the demolition of the existing buildings. In the meeting of 24 April 2017, the committee reviewed the auditor's detailed report of the audit 2016 and recommended that the financial statement 2016 be approved. The financial statement 2016 reported total income of Swiss franc 25 million, total expenditure of Swiss franc 26.3 million, and a net drawdown of funds of Swiss franc 1.3 million. The committee recommended that PricewaterhouseCoopers be appointed as auditors for 2017. The auditor explained that, commencing 2016, the financial statements, notes, and schedules are to be signed by both the General Secretary and the moderator of the Central Committee. Swiss law places the responsibility for the financial statements at the highest level of the organization. The committee heard that depreciation policy would need to be reviewed in relation to the buildings that will be demolished during the construction phase of the Green Village building project. During the meeting of 8 November 2017, the committee reviewed the audit plan 2017 as presented by the auditors, the annual assessment of fraud risk as presented by the staff, a report on compliance with WCC policy for offices outside Switzerland, and a report of depreciation policy in relation to the Green Village building project. The committee heard that 3 of the 5 EIA offices have been brought into compliance with local labor laws, but that 2 cases remained unresolved. It was discussed that additional depreciation should be applied to the Ecumenical Center Library and wings from 2018 to their demolition as a charge to unrestricted funds. Depreciation policy itself would remain unchanged, with the exception that the renovation costs would cease to be capitalized in respect of those buildings planned for demolition. In the meeting of April 26 to 18, the committee reviewed the auditor's detailed report of the audit 2017 and recommended that the financial statements 2017 be approved. The financial statement 2017 reported total income of Swiss franc 25.4 million, total expenditure of Swiss franc 26.2 million, and a net drawdown of funds of Swiss franc 0.08 million, which is 800,000. The committee recommended that the PricewaterhouseCoopers be appointed as auditors for 2018. Here we had a tender, and the PricewaterhouseCoopers who have won that tender for 4 years, but we have to renew that in a decision on a yearly basis. In the 2019, an audit tender process will be required to select an auditor for the period 2019 to 23. The committee highlighted the need to plan for the expected loss of rental income when the existing wings of the Ecumenical Center are to be demolished, to make way for the Green Village building project. This risk of cost income should be considered in the review of the Council's policy on the general reserves, including in the agenda of the Finance Policy Committee, June 2018. The committee heard about enhanced data protection laws and have entered into force concerning European Union citizens and plans for Swiss legislation to be placed in the same way. There is no need for me to read for you the audit committee terms of reference because they are present on shared points. Everybody of you know, but I have to add something which is not in your report written, which is the report of the audit committee to the executive committee, which they discussed it in the meeting before for 3 days. And I am referring to point 3 on other matters. Members representing the executive committee. The committee respectively reminds the executive committee that 2 of its members are to be appointed to serve on the audit committee for the next period, because the other 2 members which was serving have finished their term with the first 4 years. At the same time, Roman 2, professional members. The audit committee currently has 2 professional members only. The committee considers that a 3rd professional member should be sought in the interests of the succession planning, and this is what the General Secretary mentioned, that is referring to the nomination committee for appointing 3 of them. So the 2 are already present, and what is requested is only A1. Thank you very much, and I am ready to answer any question if needed.
Thank you. Are there any, yes, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for the Audit Committee? If you're ready to receive the report of the Audit Committee, will you show your card? All right, thank you. Thank you for your good work and for your faithful efforts there. We turn now to the Program Committee. I'll ask Bishop Petra Boshuber to come forward with the report of the Program Committee, and as she comes forward, you can congratulate her because yesterday she became a new grandmother.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to share the joy and gratitude with all of you. Dear brothers and sisters, let me give you a brief overview about the documents for the Program Committee during the Central Committee. Firstly, our issues in the Program Committee are the important reports of the moderator and the General Secretary. I think we have it on the screen. Yes, thank you very much. The next theme is the strategic plan from 2018 to 2021 with midterm evaluation of the strategic plan. And the following document will be the Ecumenical Diaconia document and the study guide, as well as the Ecumenical Global Health Strategy. And an important document is as well the Arusha Call to Discipleship, together with a report of the Conference on World Mission and Evangelism. The first one, the follow-up to the recommendations of the Central Committee, June 2018, the document number GenPro 02, is a report on how the recommendations of the last Central Committee 2016 on programmatic work have been followed up. All the recommendations of the Central Committee were followed up, and the implementation has been monitored by the Executive Committee, who receive regular updates. This document is presented for information. The next one is the follow-up to the Gender Advisory Group 2015, the recommendations. You will find it under the number 11. It's a report of the follow-up to the Gender Advisory Group 2015. It is divided into 3 sections. The first section is background, in which it is noted that the 2015 Gender Advisory Group report was presented to the Central Committee at the meeting in June 2016 in Trondheim. The Central Committee adopted the following recommendation. The Executive Committee commissions reference groups and the General Secretary to study the relevant recommendations and to report back to the Central Committee in 2018 on actions taken. The second section gives a report of how the recommendations was implemented by holding meetings with the commissions, reference groups, and governing bodies. The third section looks forward to the process of developing a WCC gender justice policy. This document is presented for information. The next one is the midterm evaluation report. You will find it as GenPro 04. It's the report on midterm evaluations on the strategic plan. A team was built that consisted of Central Committee members, representatives of ecumenical partners, and an external consultant conducted the evaluation in 2017 to 2018. The midterm evaluation is meant to help assess how the strategic plan enhances the relevance and achievements of the WCC as a fellowship of churches, calling one another to visible unity and engaged in a common pilgrimage of justice and peace. On the basis of the survey, the midterm evaluation team concludes that the pilgrimage of justice and peace is a strong strategic direction that enhances the relevance and achievements of the WCC. The results affirm that the strategic objectives significantly contribute to realizing the pilgrimage of justice and peace. The sample project affirmed that the strategic objectives are largely considered relevant and in the process of being achieved by the consulted stakeholders. The midterm evaluation team considers the strategic direction and the objectives as they are formulated in the plan to be relevant and helpful. But the midterm evaluation team identified a number of strategies and methodologies to help achieve the objectives, particularly with regard to strengthening the sense of belonging to the fellowship, enhancing the convening role of the WCC, and the use of intergenerational methodologies. The midterm evaluation team remains concerned about the length of the strategic plan, which may prevent its internalization and increase its complexity to its primary audience, for example, member churches and ecumenical partners. This document is for report, reflect, and approve of the general direction. Our fourth document is Gen 03.2, the update of the midterm achievements. It's a report on the achievements of the Council during the period 2014 to 2017. It was developed by staff after they had received the midterm evaluation report. During the staff planning days, the staff were asked to identify what they think are the highlights of their achievements when measured against the objectives of the WCC strategic plan for the next years. It is a comprehensive report in that it touches all areas of the Council's work. This document is presented for information. The next one are the WCC strategic plans for the years 2018 to 2021. It's the document Gen Pro 05. The plan, which has been developed based on the midterm evaluation and review of the WCC strategic plan 2014 to 2017, the Central Committee of 2014 formulated the 5 strategic objectives for the following period with a midterm evaluation. The WCC strategic plan has maintained the 5 strategic objectives and the pilgrimage of justice and peace. This is for discussion, approval, and recommendation. The next one is the update on the pilgrimage of justice and peace, document Gen Pro 03. It is an update on the pilgrimage of justice and peace. It is being presented to the Central Committee for information. The document affirms the findings of the midterm evaluation, which stated that a high percentage of Central Committee members and contact persons in the member churches see the value of the pilgrimage of justice and peace as main program emphasis of the WCC and begin participating in the process. The mottos of the 70th anniversary, this Central Committee meeting, and also the visit of Pope Francis are other expressions of growing convergence regarding the unity, spirituality, and common witness that are nurtured on the way. The document also shares the recommendations of the Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace Reference Group and the Theological Study Group. The document affirms that the pilgrim teams' visits be the way forward for the pilgrimage of justice and peace. It also affirms that the importance of the two groups working together is very, very high. And the pilgrimage team visits followed by joint reflections based on our common context. Of special significance is their affirmation that racism will be one of the main thematic focus for 2019. This one is for information. Ecumenical Global Health Strategy, we have heard as Mrs. Manu Puloka presented it a little bit earlier for us. So I have only the advice. It's the document Gen Pro 07, and it is for action and very important for our work. The next one is called to transform it action, the Ecumenical Diaconia Study Document and Study Guide. Also, we have the discussion a little bit earlier this morning during the Ecumenical Diaconia plenary. Both the WCC and the ACT Alliance have come a long way since the international consultation on the relationships between churches and specialized ministries held in Malawi in September 2014. The consultation asked WCC and ACT Alliance to develop together a document that, quotation, that clarifies our joint understanding of ecumenical diaconia and articulates who we are and what we do. WCC, LWF and ACT Alliance formed a reference group of representatives of WCC member churches, the Lutheran World Federation and ACT Alliance for the work on the document with the aim that it will foster dialogue and cooperation between churches and ecumenical partners for ecumenical diaconia and sustainable development, and facilitate training and capacity building of churches and ecumenical partners. The Executive Committee of June 2017 in Bossey, Switzerland, received the Ecumenical Diaconia Study Document. The November Executive Committee received a study guide to accompany the Diaconia document, whose aim is to facilitate response. They also recommended that the documents be shared with the churches for response and be used as an opportunity to enhance the relationship between churches and ACT Alliance. Since then, the documents have been tested at the Ecumenical Strategic Forum, at a regional seminary in South Korea, at a workshop during the Arusha conference, at a Bread for the World workshop, and comments have also been received from some churches and specialized ministries. The comments were used to revise the documents. The WCC and ACT Alliance will host a joint day on diaconia and development between the WCC Executive Committee and the ACT Alliance Assembly in Uppsala, Sweden on the 1st of November 2018. The Ecumenical Diaconia documents and the Religion and Development document will provide background information to the consultation. This one is presented for action. And there are, last but not least, the very, very informative Commission reports of the Commission on Faith and Order, the Commission on World Mission and Evangelism, the Commission on Education and Ecumenical Formation, the ICOS, Commission on Youth Engagement in the Ecumenical Movement, and the Commission of the Churches in International Affairs. And not to forget, the Arusha Call to Discipleship, the World Conference on Mission and Evangelism report. It's a very, very urgent orientation for the WCC and our future work. You find it under Gen Pro 08. The report of the World Conference on Mission and Evangelism you find as Gen Pro 09. The World Conference in Arusha, Tanzania in March this year under the theme Moving in the Spirit Called to Transforming Discipleship was the biggest ecumenical mission conference ever since Edinburgh 1910. It ended with the important Arusha Call. The Arusha Call highlights discipleship as a special gift and a calling to be active collaborators with God for the transforming of the world. 12 commitments to transformation underline these missionary and ecumenical challenges of our times. So, thank you for your attention.
As you can see, we have a huge amount of information to be considered by the program subcommittee. And I'll ask if there are comments or questions that you want to have. And if one or two of you who wanted to follow up from the ecumenical diaconia this morning want to make your comments here, this would be the time to do it, because that's one of the items that's a part of their program work. So I'll turn first to microphone 3. I think it's going to in Spanish.
Voy a hablar en español. Mi nombre es Ana María Velilla, soy de la Iglesia Discípulos de Cristo de Argentina. Primero y principal agradezco a la comisión de programa que ha trabajado tanto y tan arduamente, pero quiero destacar algo. Nosotros somos nada más que 5 personas miembros del Comité Central de América Latina, y en el momento que nosotros tuvimos la primera reunión nos hemos dividido en las distintas comisiones. Yo pertenezco a la comisión, yo elegí la comisión de programas junto con mis compañeras y compañeros que me han elegido para ese lugar, y lamentablemente nunca me han citado para esto. Pero igualmente estoy a disposición para cuando me quieran convocar. Gracias.
Thank you so much. We are very happy that we work together with you.
Okay, microphone 4.
Selina Falk, Church of Sweden, members will speak in English. In Trondheim, I have a problem with the follow-up of the last recommendation in Genpro 02, because in Trondheim, ECOS Commission piloted the body mentor program, and I was one of the coordinators of this. You can't hear me? Closer. Okay, now. So, this is so high-tech, you know. So, well, in Trondheim, ECOS Commission piloted the body mentor program, and I was one of the coordinators, and I was really encouraged by the support of the Central Committee with the adoption of this recommendation. But the ECOS Commission has an advisory function and can't implement this program by only providing advice. What is written in the follow-up is amazing, but none of it is correct. ECOS did not discuss this in our meeting in 2017, and as far as I know, there is no mentor program running this meeting, as it says in the follow-up. We talk about ecumenical formation and intergenerational communication for many being here, but it's not much available, and therefore it's important to ensure that these programs are implemented to ensure the ongoing formation. And I'm also a bit curious where you found all this information that is apparently not right. But ECOS Commission looks forward to continuing to provide ongoing advice on this and what can be developed. But we can't be responsible for implementing it. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Hello, my name is Klaas van der Kamp. I'm an advisor. In the information of the Program Commission, there's also a suggestion perhaps for the Communication Commission. It's about how the pilgrimage can brought from the strategic level to the operational level. And it might be that the key there is for communication, that communication is not only innovative in technique, but also in content, so that there is a different way, a different culture for communication. So I would advise the Communication Commission to look at that, to invent a new culture for communication, perhaps a little bit less polite and a little bit more journalistic. Thank you.
Yeah. Microphone 1.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Just to say thank you for reopening and inviting us as advisors to have the opportunity to speak. My name is Amanda Mukwashi. I am the Chief Executive of Christian Aid Advisor. My comments were actually a reflection from this morning. In particular, I wanted to comment on Dr. Rudman's paper that he presented, and really welcomed the conversations around the 4 thematic areas that were in that paper, from economic justice, climate justice, gender justice. And I have a couple of reflections for the committee, if you allow me. The first one is really, really important for us as specialized ministries, because that speaks to the work that we do. However, one of the things that is very clear in our mind is that in order for us to be credible in those areas as we go out, we need to marry them and couple them with changes and conversations about our internal issues. And one of those internal issues that I wanted to flag up was the issue of safeguarding. We work with very vulnerable communities, very vulnerable people, and that includes the work that the churches do. And so it would be really welcoming and strategic, I think, for us to reflect that as we talk about our programming work. And the second observation that I had, which was very interesting for me, because this is my first time attending this meeting, was just the amount of papers that are having to be printed and that we're dealing with. As we talk about the issue of climate justice and the fact that as stewards, perhaps the best way for us to really tackle the issue of the crisis of values is to walk the talk. And so the change needs necessarily to be reflected from inside going outward. But I just want to say thank you very much, and it has been a learning opportunity for me. I pray and wish you all the best for the rest of the conversations.
Thank you. That is much for us to take under advisement. Bishop, is there anything else you want to share? And then
No, thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you for all your questions and your comments. With the ECOs, we would like to try to clarify these questions you brought, and the other things I have noted down, and we will discuss it in the program committee. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your patience this morning, and it is about time for us to get ready for lunch, and we'll have some announcements. But before, I didn't know if Metropolitan Anifan wanted to say anything about public issues, but I don't see him there. But the main thing to say is you're going to meet at lunch. Yes, you're going to meet at lunch, and then we'll hear more of a report after lunch. But after the General Secretary gives announcements, I wondered if I could ask Reverend Festus Asana, would you be willing to go to microphone 1, and after he gives the announcements, would you offer a prayer to close our session as we go to the lunchtime?
Lunch today is in the cafeteria, but sandwich is also available in the lobby, and that will be a remarkable shorter line than in the cafeteria. There's a hearing session in the lunch break, a tray lunch. It doesn't say where it is. Any further information?
South 4.
In South 4, in the first floor, on the situation in Burundi. You're welcome if you are interested to hear more about this. Then there is another piece of information about transport to Bosse tomorrow for those who are here in Geneva. In the afternoon, after we have had the worship service in the morning, there will be a program, festival program in Bosse in the afternoon and evening, and buses will leave from the Ecumenical Center here at 3:30, and you are free to take a ride and join us. The third point is to announce that the United and Uniting Churches will have a tray lunch on Monday. This is announced today because we don't meet until then, in the lunch break 1 to 2:30 in Salon John in Bosse. Have a nice lunch.
All right, we'll ask Reverend Festus at microphone 1 to offer prayer as we close.
God of love, God of grace, giver of all good gifts, we lift up our voices in thanksgiving for all your gifts to us. The gift of life, the talents we share in meetings like this, the gift of food, and the gift of fellowship. Thank you for the meal we are going to eat. Thank you for the time we'll spend together. Accept our thanks, O God, in Jesus' name. Amen.